Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. Thank you everybody that left questions on my Game of Thrones video this weekend. Everybody likes hearing about the Tyrells, and I did try to include a couple questions about the Night of Flowers. Everyone's still kind of thinking about what's going on as of the end of Season 5. And don't forget, this weekend, actually, Khaleesi Terminator is on the big screen. Lots of things happening with Game of Thrones people in the next 2 weeks. So I also have Comic-Con news at the end of this. So here we go. Just careful for spoilers if you're not caught up on Season 5. So here we go. John Shark asks, do you think that Tormund will lead the wildlings against the mutinied crows as well as the White Walkers? I hope Tormund kills Alliser Thorne this time. Yeah, I don't think that they're just going to be sitting around for all of Season 6. They're down in the gift right now. Remember, that was part of the promise that Jon Snow made to them, that they would get the gift in exchange for coming down. The wildlings themselves aren't like super best friends with Jon Snow or anything like that, but the Night's Watch hates the wildlings, the ones that mutinied. That was the whole reason for them killing Jon Snow. So there's like a 99% chance that there's going to be something going on between the crows and the wildlings. The real question is are they going to be able to find some sort of common ground? Because if the White Walkers come and they're still fighting each other, then it's going to be really bad for everyone. Next question, Akash asks, I'm currently reading Dance with Dragons, and I just read the first Melisandre POV chapter, and in the vision, instead of seeing Stannis like she wants to, she says I ask him to show me Azor Ahai, and all he shows me is snow. Do you think that this is hinting that Jon is going to be Azor Ahai? No, not necessarily. I think that it just indicates that he is a person of interest to the Lord of Light. They did a good job at the end of Season 5 in telling us that Melisandre isn't always 100% on her game. She was so confident that Stannis was going to be the champion of the Red God, but in the last episode you see that look of horror on her face as the blood drains out, like she's realizing, oh my god, I was wrong about this. So don't ever take Melisandre's visions as being super literal. All I think it means is that he is a very important character. It doesn't mean whether he's important bad or important good. There's a lot of competing theories that he could be co-opted by the Night's King and the White Walkers, or he could be co-opted by Melisandre and the Red God. Right now everything is still widely open to interpretation, so if you have a theory that involves Jon Snow being important, it's at least a little bit right, no matter what you think. Next question, Wyatt asks, what will happen to the Stormlands now that House Baratheon is essentially dead? Well, the crown would probably just appoint someone else caretaker, like they would give it to someone else. And when I say the crown, I'm really talking about Kevan Lannister, because he's the one calling the shots in the small council right now. He came back to King's Landing when Cersei got her ass thrown in jail. So he is like the new Tywin in King's Landing, although he is no Tywin. Just in terms of personalities, I think they're cut from the same cloth, but Kevan is a little bit softer than Tywin. He's not quite as hardcore. Here's a crazy thought. He's not first in line, but remember Jaime promised Bronn a bigger castle, a much bigger castle, if he came down and rescued Myrcella with him. It looks like Myrcella's dead, but if some other big need were to arise, the crown could promise Storm's End to Bronn. The other lords would probably get super pissed about it. Like, I don't think anybody in the small council, any of the other aristocracy in Westeros would go for it. They'd be super pissed because Storm's End is huge. But it's always possible they could offer that as a reward to Bronn for doing something else really, really crazy. Like, bring me the head of Tyrion Lannister and I will give you Storm's End. Realistically speaking though, the crown will probably just appoint a temporary caretaker. Next question, Tech asks, will there be an Aegon's Conquest spin-off series or any spin-offs in Game of Thrones? Well, I think HBO is going to try and do everything it can to keep Game of Thrones on HBO beyond the main series. So I would say yes to spin-off, but it's up in the air as to what it could be. Aegon's Conquest would definitely be very interesting, but I think HBO would go with something a little bit more familiar. Typically when networks do spin-offs, they use familiar characters, and like the closest thing we have to characters that we haven't seen but that we've heard about on the show are people from Robert's Rebellion, like Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar Targaryen. If HBO wanted to lay the safest possible bet for a spin-off series, that's probably what they would do. If they wanted to get really high concept with it, that they would do something from the distant past, like Dunk and Egg or Aegon's Conquest, or even Ancient Valyria. That would probably involve a lot of CG dragons. Anything requiring heavy special effects was probably pretty low on their list. Robert's Rebellion would look almost exactly like Game of Thrones does right now, and I think HBO likes that idea. It just means they wouldn't have to pay tens of millions of dollars for really different costumes, really different locations. They could shoot a lot of the same places and just redress them a little bit. Plus you have the added action of a major conflict, like a major shitstorm, and those tend to be very exciting to watch on screen. The problem is that if they did something more with Game of Thrones, they would probably still want to maintain some of the really amazing WTF stuff like White Walkers. And we didn't see a whole lot of White Walkers during Robert's Rebellion. Like they had just started to resurface at the end of that. So there are going to be issues no matter what they choose. But I think, Robert's Rebellion is the safe bet, but something cooler would be Dunk and Egg. Next question, Medallion asks, who do you think can restore peace and control in the North now that Stannis is dead and the Starks are lost? Well, I think the Boltons are really in charge of keeping the North under control, although Littlefinger is trying to move in on that. Littlefinger doesn't strike me as the type to bring peace, so I think for most of Season 6, Roose Bolton is going to try and do it, but the North will remember in super hardcore ways. Like seriously, they're casting a bunch of people for Northern storylines. So if anything, Season 6 up in the North is going to look a lot more like it did during the War of the Five Kings. The North making war against Roose Bolton and thinning out his ranks. His army is still pretty big. Like whenever he fought Stannis at the end of the season, it looked like he had a massive army. So maybe the North will be culling that through the course of Season 6. Next question, S.J. Burks asks, can you talk about the differences between the Knight of Flowers on the show versus the books? Well, you're talking about Loras. He's called the Knight of Flowers because of his personal coat of arms. It's just a variation on the traditional House Tyrell coat of arms. He has 3 golden flowers on a field of green. It's just meant to honor his own personal taste and his position as third son. Really the biggest change, and it's actually a pretty big one, is that in the books, Loras is part of Joffrey's Kingsguard. He spends a lot more time in proximity to Jaime, so Jaime thinks about him in his POV chapters. On the show, you really don't get a sense for his character as much as you do in the books. Jaime thinks of him as not being false, meaning like he's not a complete liar, but he hasn't proven himself as a true knight yet. But for the most part, the show has hit a lot of like the really big stuff. He was part of Renly's Rainbow Knights during the War of the Five Kings. But what the show has done is tried to marry him to Cersei, so that's why he's not in the Kingsguard, because Kingsguard can't marry. And even before he was supposed to marry Cersei, he was supposed to marry Sansa, so he couldn't be in the Kingsguard then either, so I think that's why the show made that change. Next question, Mercury Wolf asks, why are the Lannisters so evil? Why do they believe themselves better than anyone else? Well, I mean, that's a matter of perspective. I wouldn't call them evil, I would just say most of them are very determined. Cersei is the closest thing you could call to being a cruel Lannister. And when you think about it from Cersei's perspective, I mean, the show doesn't do POV chapters, so you don't get a sense for this. But in the books, Cersei just feels very undermined. Like she feels growing up a woman, there were a lot of opportunities that weren't given to her just because Westeros is such a patriarchy. She even jokes that as children, because Jaime and Cersei were twins, they would actually switch clothes. Jaime would dress up in her little girl's clothing, and she would dress up in his armor, and they would walk around the castle to see if anybody noticed. And usually nobody would notice. So she thinks to herself, had I grown up a man, I wouldn't be having all these problems that I'm having right now. We have no idea what would happen had she actually been born a man. But if you really look at it, she kind of is the son that Tywin always wanted. She wants power. The problem is that her circumstances have led her to make some very questionable choices in this past season. So I think you could argue either way, like even if she had been born a man, maybe she'd still be just as nuts as she is right now. So the Lannisters aren't so much evil as they are morally gray. The closest thing to an evil person on the show, just in terms of the great houses right now, would be Roose Bolton. Just rewatch that scene where he tells Ramsay about his mother and tell me that Roose Bolton is not evil. Next question, Yunbai asks, is Daenerys going to free her other dragons someday? Well, I would say while Mother's away, the dragons will play. So, while Tyrion is watching Meereen, don't expect everything to go completely smoothly with the dragons. Somebody still has to feed them while she's gone. I don't know whether or not they'll get out or how soon, but I think that they're just a bomb waiting to go off. They're kind of like the wildlings sitting down in the gift. They're not just going to sit around for an entire season and do nothing. We can only hope that they'll make some really spectacular mess, and it'll be amazing to watch on screen. Next question, Kat asks, what's going to happen to Mace Tyrell in Braavos? Is he going to die there? Well, I think, if you're talking about the stuff going on with Arya, I think the whole reason for all that Bravo stuff with Mace was really to get Meryn Trant there. Like that's why the writers wrote it that way. They resolved that storyline in the season finale. Meryn Trant is gone, so I think Mace Tyrell is just going to come back, and he'll just be back in King's Landing during season 6. Kevin Lannister looks like he's fixed the small council, and they need their Master of Coin, and that's what Mace Tyrell is, so they need him back in King's Landing. Next question, Madeline asks, where is Dolorous Edd? We know he survived Hardhome in the boat with Jon. Why wasn't he with Jon at the season finale? Well, I mean, it was like the end of the night, so he was probably asleep. They'll address that in episode 1. You have to remember they ended on a cliffhanger, so they have to tell us what happens in the moments after that. Someone has to find his body, everyone has to go nuts, because those people that killed Jon, that wasn't the entire Night's Watch. That was really only about half of them. So don't worry, we'll find out what Dolorous Edd is going to do. We'll find out where Ghost is, like he'll probably show up again. Seriously, that's an even bigger question. Where was Ghost in the season finale? What was he doing? He was probably off hunting, but if Drogon can sense that Daenerys is in trouble and come to her aid, then why didn't Ghost do that? He must have just found like the biggest, tastiest rabbit ever. Next question, John asks, how the hell is she going to face the White Walkers? Without Dragonglass, she's screwed. What defense do White Walkers have against dragons? Well, it sounds like you kind of answered your own question a little bit. She has dragons, so she doesn't need Dragonglass as much. As for White Walkers fighting dragons, I would think that they would just use projectiles. They have those special spears made of enchanted ice, so they'd probably just find a way to use those as projectiles against dragons if they were flying around. Just like White Walkers would be weak against dragons, dragons would be weak against White Walkers. One of the really good things about Game of Thrones is that no one is like supremely overpowered, even though it seems like Daenerys is overpowered with her dragons. The workaround to that is that the dragons just can't be completely controlled. It's like raising a lion. You can teach it to do tricks, but it still might end up biting you because its instinct is genetic. Like it will always be stronger than what you program it to do. So thank you so much everyone for submitting questions. These are always a ton of fun to do. What's going to happen next is I'll post my Arthur Dayne video and then I'll do a Comic-Con preview after that, just kind of explaining what's going to be going on with the Game of Thrones panel, what my schedule is going to be, like the videos I'll be doing that week. Really, I just want to couch your expectations for that Game of Thrones panel. They don't really give any good information away about the next season. They usually show a blooper reel and a casting video, but because Comic-Con is so early this year, it's totally possible that they won't have that casting video. It'd be a big disappointment, so I'm hoping they bring it. Maisie Williams did tease the Faceless Men last year, but we kind of knew that was going to happen already, so it wasn't a big revelation. You can't even consider it spoilery. For those asking about meetups, there will be a Comic-Con meetup. I don't know exactly when it's going to be. I'm still finalizing my schedule. It'll probably be sometime Friday or Saturday. So there will be some point during the weekend when you can come, give me a high five and say hello. Which actually reminds me, congratulations to this week's giveaway winner. Naveen Kumar, you win a $20 Amazon gift card. Just be sure to private message me on my channel so I can get your contact info. And if you guys didn't see, I posted a Guardians video yesterday. I meant to start a new Marvel giveaway in that. So if you want to enter the Marvel giveaway for this week, just go leave a comment on that Guardians video. You can click here for that. And you can click here to learn all about Resurrection in A Song of Ice and Fire. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.